The Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, a shoe I didn't want to like, and I took a bit of a chance for because of this channel, but I'm really glad I did. If you watch any content on this channel, you know that I'm traditionally not a big fan of Saucony, and I have my reasons, and I talked about that in my History of the Endorphin series video. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in that whole story. But I do have a bit of a history with the Endorphin series. I did own a pair of Endorphin 1s. I did not like them. The 2s were really no different than the 1s. I also didn't really care about them, and I just completely ignored the 3 because by that time I was just sort of done with Saucony, and I never thought I would come back to Saucony. But because of this channel and because of the popularity of the Endorphin series, I decided that I needed to at least try the Endorphin 4s. Because if I don't, that's a big gap on this channel, and I wanted to fill that gap, at least to say I've tried them, and here's why I really still don't like them. But I was really, really surprised. And the surprise was that I liked the Endorphin Speed 4 and the Endorphin Pro 4. This shoe has really sort of changed my opinion on Saucony to some degree. That I'm open to running in Saucony shoes, and I'm paying more attention to Saucony because this shoe has been so good. Now, I've talked a lot about the Endorphin Pro 4 in a bunch of videos on this channel. It's been in data sets. It's been something that's been on this channel a bunch over the summer. But since my initial impressions video, I haven't really talked about this shoe anywhere else. I've done a few comparisons, comparing it to shoes that have come out that I think are relevant to this. Some I'll mention towards the end of this video. But otherwise, I didn't really talk about this shoe very much, but I was slowly running at it. I did put the additional 100 miles into this shoe over the past 6 months, but it's taken me 6 months because while I do enjoy this shoe, I enjoy it quite a bit, I just have a bunch of other shoes to run in, and I have one shoe in particular who just really has replaced any need I have for this shoe completely, and I'll get to that in a moment. Now, I've already done an initial impressions video on this shoe. That's where I get into all the specs and everything about this shoe. If you're interested in that, there'll be a link in the description to that. Go check that out. This instead is going to be sort of my evolved impressions, which, to be honest, aren't really much different than what I thought in the initial impressions, though there's a few things that have changed a little bit. And I'm going to talk about the durability of this shoe just a little bit because I think there's some things to discuss there. And starting with the durability, let's start with the upper. Now, in the initial impressions, I really did not like this upper, and I can say I still do not like this upper. It just has all the hallmarks of a Saucony upper to me. Very vague fitting, very sloppy fitting, very cheap materials, very bad finish. Just, it's not a great upper, but it hasn't really caused any problems. It hasn't caused me any pain. It hasn't caused any real rubbing. It does the job, but it could fit better. Now, a couple criticisms I had of the last of the shoe, the shape of the shoe in my initial impressions, was I thought this lateral edge, the way it swoops into the big toe, was just too extreme. And I think that even more now that I've run over 100 miles in this shoe, and you can kind of see around this area where my pinky toe sort of pokes out and there's a dark spot here. Again, it's not caused any rubbing, but this just swoops in too much. And then on the medial side, I wish there was more foam in the toe. And I talked about this in my initial impressions because you can see that my big toe sort of goes over the midsole. The fit of this shoe is just sort of all over the place. The material selection in here has not gotten any better. I think it's just, again, feels very cheap. It doesn't really wrap around the foot in any real nice way. It's not that Saucony can't make a nice upper. They do make a nice upper. And case in point, I think the upper on this, the Endorphin Pro 4, is a great upper. I think the textile on this upper is great. I don't like the booty upper. I don't like the laces, but I think the material selection on this upper is great. I just wish they could have carried that into this shoe. But again, I associate Saucony uppers as just having generally fairly cheap materials, very poor finish quality. It's not that they're not durable. It's not that they don't work. There's better uppers out there. And this is really, I think, the biggest drawback of this shoe. Overall, the shoe's held up really well. I think from an outsole standpoint, this is my right shoe. Again, I'm a 4-foot striker who's supinates, and I'm really rough on this area. You can see that the lattice of the outsole has really worn quite a bit here, but there's still a ton of rubber here. And I've really just worn off cosmetically the lattices here. The outsole, the exposed Power on PB foam has withstood really well. The heel rubber has withstood really well. Overall, the durability of the shoe has been extremely impressive, and I think that adds to the versatility of this shoe. Two other things I want to mention on the fit finish of this shoe, and they're really kind of signifying Saucony quality to me. And these are things I've only ever experienced with Saucony shoes. And I go back to the Convara maybe 10 or 12 years ago. So this is something that's not new for Saucony. This is something I've always associated with Saucony. The first, and you can see it here in the heel, you can see the navy dye bleeding into the lighter colors. That should not happen on a shoe of this price and of this quality. And that bleeding has only ever happened on Saucony shoes for me, or very cheap shoes from Walmart that I've had here or there just to like kick around in. That shouldn't be happening on this shoe. Another thing which I think a lot of people have commented about Saucony shoes, specifically Ed Budd, I think says that these shoes smell like a garden center. I think of a pool store, like pool toys, PVC pool toys, that chemical smell. That's something that Saucony shoes have very distinctly. They have a chemically off-gassing smell, which is pretty intense. Now, when you get them new, straight out of the box, that first whiff of the chemical off-gassing smell, mostly from the foam, but I think the adhesives in the shoe as well, is intense. And again, other shoes have that, but it goes away after, I don't know, a couple uses. You no longer smell that. But this shoe is now over 7 months old. I have over 100 miles in it. And as I'm filming this, I can smell the foam still off-gassing. This still smells like a garden center, according to Ed Budd, or a cheap pool toy. Again, that shouldn't be happening. I'm being harsh. And I really do actually like this shoe. Besides the fit finish and the upper on the shoe, I think the rest of this shoe is brilliant. And I think that's why I keep coming back to running this shoe every once in a while. Again, I have a lot of other shoes to run in over the past 6 months, and I have one in particular that's really replaced this shoe, but I still love running in this shoe. And what I think this shoe does really, really well is just sort of that all-around versatile running. In fact, that's what I called this, everyday versatility, in my initial impressions review, because I think this shoe really can do a little bit of everything. And I think that's what has earned this shoe its reputation, is that this is one of those shoes that you can really go from easy into, I would say, marathon, maybe half marathon pace. Faster than that, at least for me. I think some of the technologies, especially the speed roll in this shoe, kind of get in the way. But for everything else before that, I think this shoe does really well, and I think that's why a lot of people like it. Now, I am never going to recommend a plated shoe as sort of your daily trainer or a shoe that you're doing the majority of your running in. I do think you want to do that in a non-plated shoe. But running in this shoe, I can understand why someone would want to use this shoe for the majority of their running, because not only is it very versatile, but it's very comfortable, and it does a lot of paces really, really well. And what I think makes this shoe so versatile is this midsole. It's the combination of power and PB foam, the very, very flexible nylon plate in this shoe, and the speed roll technology from Saucony, which is really just an exaggerated toe spring in the plate. Now, starting with the foam, Power on PB is a foam that's very durable. It's not the most resilient foam, meaning there's not a lot of energy return in it, but there's enough, at least for a training context. And it's a very cushioned foam, but it's not a foam you're sinking into. It's more of a foam that absorbs shock and cushions and protects your foot, as opposed to really giving you a lot of energy out of the foot strike. Now, Power on PB is a Pebax foam. It's a beaded Pebax foam. Pebax is the same brand that Nike uses for Zoom X, but they're very different foams. So don't expect this to be like Zoom X. And I think that was one of my original issues with the Endorphin Speed 1 way back when, is I expected this foam to feel like Zoom X. It doesn't feel like Zoom X. It's got its own thing, and I think in a training context it works really well. But you take Power and PB and you put it with this nylon plate that is very flexible. This is a plated shoe, remember. It's very flexible, so you're getting a lot of flex along the length of the shoe, but because of the wings on the lateral and the medial side in the plate, you're controlling a lot of the torsional twist, giving you the benefits of a plate without a lot of the drawbacks in the overly stiff plate. This is a nice shoe that does have some flex in it for a plated shoe. Again, I'm not going to recommend running in a plated shoe. Even one this flexible, all of the time. But if you have to, this is a really good option. And the last thing is the speed roll technology, which is the exaggerated toe spring in the forefoot of the shoe. That keeps rolling you forward. And that, I think, is really what the magic in the ride of the shoe is and why it works so well. Now, specifically to the plate, when I did my initial impressions video on this shoe, that was like 6 months ago, I was running a lot in super shoes, carbon plated super shoes at the time. And I was thinking that the plate in this shoe is kind of non-existent because I was running in much stiffer plated shoes. So when I had switched to this shoe, it would feel like there was nothing in the shoe. And I really didn't feel the plate in this shoe. But when I came back to this shoe recently to get it over 100 miles so I could do this long-term impressions video, I have not been running in plated shoes for maybe 5-6 weeks, other than super spikes, a pair of track spikes with a plate in it. But track spikes are a different thing. I don't really count that as a plated shoe. I haven't been running in a plated shoe in quite some time. So when I put this shoe on, I immediately noticed, yes, this is a plated shoe. And it took that kind of time away from plated shoes, coming back to this to really realize that, yes, there is a plate in this shoe. I can definitely feel the torsional control of the plate, especially the wings in this. And when I'm compressing the foam, I can feel that the foam is compressing in a very even way because the plate is compressing everything down equally and it's unloading it equally. So this is a plated shoe and it does feel like a plated shoe, but it's very subtle, especially if you're coming from spending a lot of time in carbon plated shoes. But again, I think that's part of the brilliance of this shoe. But I mentioned that I just don't run in this shoe very much because another shoe has really replaced it for me, and that would be this shoe, the Nike Pegasus Plus. These, I think, are the two shoes that compete head-to-head directly right now in 2024. I think they both do a brilliant job of covering all of the same bases. However, this shoe, I think, goes faster because I have less rocker in this shoe. So when I'm going faster than half marathon pace, I'm getting into 10K, 5K, even faster than 5K. This shoe excels at that, where this shoe, I can't do that. So this shoe, the Pegasus Plus, has really replaced the need for this shoe for me. But I will admit that the Peg Plus is not really for everyone. Having a non-plated performance trainer, especially a shoe that's that minimal to do a lot of that work, I don't think a lot of people are really prepared for that. I do think that's a trend we're seeing evolve. But this shoe, I think, is a good middle ground between a much higher stack, much stiffer super shoe and something like a non-plated daily trainer. I think this is a good bridge between the two. And it's a shoe that can plug into a lot of different trainer-racer combos and be the tempo trainer between those two shoes. And I think it works brilliantly. I think Saucony really nailed it with this shoe. And I'm shocked to be sitting here saying that I like this shoe as much as I do, and I'm giving it a very, very positive approval. It is because of the brilliance of this shoe that I've changed my opinion on Saucony, and I will be covering Saucony much closer on this channel moving into next year, moving into 2025. I still have my issues with some of the material selections that Saucony uses for their uppers, the fit finish of some of their uppers as well, but I can't fault their technology. I can't fault their midsoles. I can't fault the geometries that they use. I just can't fault that. This shoe works. So I will be covering more Saucony models moving into 2025, and I'm quite excited where this shoe's headed in the next generation. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you find this content useful, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.